Okay. 1, 2, and 3. Hey everyone, welcome to Chuck Furuya Uncorked. And instead of Chuck, we have the even better upgrade of Kali Furuya.
Yeah.
Kali, thank you for obviously being on your own podcast.
Thank you. And we have Luke Aguinaldo here.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And Luke is a newcome wine enthusiast, we would say, right? Getting interested. Both of you guys are really interested in calibration of your palate, right? So for those viewers at home, this week's episode is going to be how do we actually calibrate our palates and learn all these different wine definitions that we use in the industry that you can take and use at your local retail shop or restaurant when you're actually ordering wine, knowing if you like it sweeter, if you like it drier, if you like something with a little bit more body. This at-home exercise is going to be a really, really fun way for you to actually calibrate your palate.
Well, and even when tasting the wine,
Absolutely.
right? Determining what is sweet, what is less sweet, or what is more acidic, what has more body, more tannin structure.
Yes, because Psalms,
Awesome.
we're guilty all the time of just being like, yeah, that's a high acid white wine. And it's like, what does that actually mean,
Yeah.
right? So we have lots of at-home items that you can actually use in your own at-home experiment to calibrate what is acidity. So we have acidity, we're going to do bitterness and tannin, as well as alcohol, body, and finish it off in sweetness in that order. So you guys ready to get started?
Ready,
I'm excited.
I'm
Yeah?
super
I'm really-
excited.
yeah, I'm
yeah.
looking
Have you
forward
guys
to this.
done anything like this before?
No, I actually not just, but maybe a month ago or so when we were at Micah Suderman's house, learned how to identify acidity levels. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's
So
cool.
what's really fun for me, wine is obviously the enjoyment of wine first and foremost. But when you're actually breaking down a wine in terms of structure, there's actual physiological reactions that happen in your mouth, in your body as a whole, on your palate, different sensations that you can use to actually help identify grapes, but also just identify what you like in wine. So it's really, really helpful. We're going to start off with that being said with acidity. So that works. We have wine number 1 in the front, followed by wine number 2 in the back. So I'm going
Got
to
it.
ask that we just take a sip of the cup number 1. in
Number
the front,
one, facing me.
facing
on the
you
left
from the
here.
left-hand
It's on-
side. Yeah.
Left-hand side
in the front.
In the front.
Yeah.
in the front.
Yep.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Kampai.
Kampai.
I like that.
So describe what you are tasting maybe to our viewers.
It tastes like lemon juice. So not sweet, but very lemony.
Lemony.
Sour.
Okay, let's go to the second one in the back here.
Second one in the back.
Less acidic, less lemony.
So what actually does that mean to you? Where exactly are we feeling the differences in our mouths from number 1, which you said, Kali, was more acidic compared to number 2. Let's go back to 1 again.
Yeah.
Hold that pucker power. I personally feel this right along I'm actually physically salivating. So for me, this is how I'm gauging acidity because our body's natural response is going to be this pucker power right along my jawline here in the back corners. That's me actually salivating. Do you see the difference? So
I do.
for those of you at home, what we did is we have a little bit of water, but in the water, we have different amounts of fresh lemon juice. So the first cup, number 1, that is going to be, I would say, around 2 full squeezes of lemon versus 2 to 3 full squeezes of concentrated lemon juice. And the one in the back, number 2, only had 1 little squeeze, just a little spritz of lemon.
Fresh lemon.
Fresh
A
lemon.
Fresh lemon.
Fresh
Okay.
lemon.
So 2 squeezes of fresh lemon.
Yep.
And this first one. Okay.
So the first one, you can see the actual tang. That would be a way to describe it. But also you actually see your body reacting to it, correct?
Salivation is
Salivation, yeah. What do you guys notice going back and forth between the two?
Let me try.
for me, going from 1 to 2, 1 tastes like it doesn't taste
Mellow.
very mellow. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just because number 1 is so glaring.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like your mouth is more relaxed
Yeah.
when you drink the second one,
Mm-hmm.
the not as sour one. And the first one, like you said, tightens up.
Yeah.
Kind of feel like in my throat too, kind of tightening up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely like my mouth muscles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The heavy concentration for me, when we say pucker, like you feel that along your jaw, but it's also like right on that tongue zinginess as well too for me. Awesome. So do you think applying this to wine, obviously we're not going to have a full cup of lemon juice in wine, but we can see something like a Sancerre from the Loire Valley in France, maybe some styles of Chenin Blanc from the same region, things like that have a naturally high acidity. It's going to be that salivation and that zing, that spring from your actual jawline there.
You'll have that reaction, not quite like this, but
Yes.
you'll feel that reaction to something acidic.
Exactly.
And so when I learned how I learned or to gauge acidity level is after you drink the wine, is kind of bending forward and holding your mouth open to see how fast like spit will literally start
Yeah, exactly.
drooling out of your mouth if it's a high acid wine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And
Oh.
thinking about this in context of food, right? If we have this cup here, that's going to be a very different reaction compared to if you had it with something bland or like a shellfish. So if you have like something like a high acid wine, it's like adding a squeeze of lemon onto whatever you're having. So that's kind of like a similar parallel that we can see how food and wine pairings interact when you have actual different acid levels.
Got it.
Awesome. So that was acid.
Very cool.
Once again, for those of you at home, experiment with different saturations of a lemon in water and keep it fun. Right now, Cully and Luke are doing it blind, which is more fun for me, if anything. Moving on to the next one, we're going to be looking at bitterness, translating to wine in tannins. So I would like you to drink number 1. It's labeled 1 in the front here, and just give that a sip. And then we're going to go to number 2.
Wow.
Whoa.
I know. So
Good cup.
for those of you at home, I'm not going to say what kind yet, but we have different styles of coffee. Cully does not like coffee too much.
You don't like coffee?
I'm not a coffee guy.
Really?
Bro.
Yeah.
It's
young
more
boy.
so the caffeine in it. I like the flavor.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
I like the taste of coffee.
You don't like caffeine?
Oh, dude, I get so jittery and
Jitteries.
I get weird on it. I don't like that. Yeah.
Oh,
So maybe by the end of this episode, he won't be drunk, but he'll be coffee drunk, right? We'll see. But between tasting the one in the front first and then the second one, which one is more bitter to you?
definitely number 2.
Number 2.
Number 2. Yeah.
Okay, and what are you feeling? What's going on in your mouth to make you feel that that one is more bitter?
Oh, yeah. I feel it like a bite of my tongue, back of my tongue.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel it like on my entire tongue almost. And we're talking about pucker power with acidity. It's almost that same reaction, but bitterness to me.
You can physically feel the structure of the bitterness, which we say in the wine community when you're analyzing something like tannins or in white wines, phenolic bitterness. That's a very similar quality. For background, wine, I said wine number 1. Cup number 1 is going to be actual just normal brewed coffee, just pour over coffee. And wine number 2 is going to be homemade espresso made by my husband, but with an espresso machine supported by Chris Ramel, who gave that to us. So
Thank you.
episode sponsored
Shameless
by
plugs.
Chris Ramel.
That's good. I
Yeah.
like espresso.
But
I do.
when you're thinking about something like bitterness and tannin, that's so important for food and wine pairings because obviously wines have different levels of tannin and bitterness. And how does that interact with food? So if you have something overly bitter, or sometimes if there's different levels of oak tannins that can impart different levels of bitterness, that will change the dish as well. So something that's let's say we go back to that fresh fish example with the little bit of squeeze of lemon from a acidic wine.
Right.
Just like if you have something really, really delicate and light and you do something with a lot of bitterness or a heavy red with that poor little fish, it's going to get chopped up because this tannin structure is actually a really long phenolic compound. So it has a huge presence in your mouth. I know when you were saying you drink the espresso, you guys were like, whoa.
Yeah.
The same with wine. If you have like a really tannic Nebbiolo or Cabernet Sauvignon, that's going to overdo something really, really light, delicate flavor, you know?
I see.
Yeah. So next time you're drinking reds or even whites and you're acknowledging bitterness, this is an actual sensation that you can use to calibrate from. So for those of you at home, once again, we have regular coffee compared to a dark espresso. Perfect.
This is so interesting.
Yeah, I'm like.
Is it helpful?
It's very helpful. I want to drink a sip of wine right now.
Yeah.
What is it?
The one on the side. Well,
After.
lucky for you, Luke, the next one coming up actually is wine.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
And I'm not going to
Nice.
tell you what we are gauging.
Okay.
So why don't you take a sip of number 1 first?
Okay.
Now take a sip of number 2, which is right in back of it.
Okay.
I don't know if number 1 pairs very well with espresso, by the way.
Tastes like coffee wine.
Alcohol level.
Interesting. Yeah.
So
Whew. It's like a wine shot.
Okay.
courtesy of Papa Ferruyo, who I think just carries around vodka with him at all times
Oh,
or
is this
something.
There's vodka in here.
So no, so we actually decided we were originally just going to do vodka and water, but what we ended up doing, because we think it's a better example because it carries the flavor and the actual punch of it more, is putting it in wine. So the first cup is just the wine on its own, but then the second cup is, I did one of those little vodka bottles.
No way.
And poured it between all 3 of our glasses. So
I'm having another sip of this.
So what do you where do you identify the alcohol level to you?
I want to taste smooth for some reason now.
it's all going down a lot easier.
Let me try again. I would say number 1's like acidic. Am I wrong?
No, I mean, the wine itself is naturally acidic. So when you have a little bit more alcohol in the second one, that's going to give, for me, that's heat.
Yes.
Heat.
Especially like moving down your
Yeah. Feel it
Cully
right
took
now.
it like a shot
Yeah.
too. He was like,
I didn't know what I was
"Let's
getting
go."
myself into. I closed my eyes and everything.
So for me, gauging alcohol, we all know I'm Asian. I get Asian glow. So not only can you see it on my face, but I really get it from like the sides of my neck, and I get like an actual radiation of heat.
So.
Yeah, so desu. Yeah. Kanpai. So how did when you had that reaction, Cully, what were you actually feeling? Was that the heat?
It was the heat. For one, I mean, like you can even just feel it on your palate, but to me, it traveling down, you can still feel that heat to me.
And because your body, as you guys see for all of these, but especially when you swig them back like that, your body is reacting to these wines or beverages or whatever it is. So we have to keep that in mind once again with pairing wines and foods, because, you know, I'm assuming if you had that on its own, that's going to be a very, very strong presence. So you don't want anything to drown out, once again, another delicate dish, correct?
Right.
So just another thing to be mindful of when you're actually thinking about wine and food pairings, but also just about what do you actually enjoy. Some people are a little bit more sensitive to alcohol and things like that. So what do you typically enjoy when you're having wine and food together or wine on its own? What do you like? And this exercise is really, really helpful for that.
To me, it's there's a few things I want to say is the balance is if a wine is too alcoholic. I mean, this is a very drastic.
Yes,
alcohol
obviously
level.
we're exaggerating a little bit here.
It throws the balance off. So for someone like Fred Pataccia, our brother-in-law, that only wants one glass of wine a day, maybe he should add a shot of vodka.
He'll get his job done.
Yeah, exactly. If
Fair.
you're just looking for that one sipper at the end of your day, fortify it a little bit.
It's a good move.
But it's so helpful because most people are like, yeah, they see the ABV on the bottle. And granted, winemaking is a big play in that and how actual, integrated the wine is. But it really, really makes a difference, I think, when you see it with different foods back to back as well.
Well, and also, what about back to back? Like, if you drink a wine this alcoholic and then you sip on the first wine again, how does that change the first wine to you?
Well, your dad actually uses this phrase a lot. But when you have, for example, it on its own, and this one isn't fortified with alcohol. So it's like that tree, right? Where he said there's no branches sticking out. So when you have something like this, there's a long limb in the alcohol category. So it's something that is a little bit jarring for most people, hence that reaction that you probably had. So for me, it definitely makes me go back to number one because it's a little bit, this is smoother. You know what I mean? But with that being said, it's really important if you're studying to be a somm, being aware of alcohol, because if you're pouring really seamless wines in the beginning with low alcohol that have great balance, then you come out and you just pour them something really hefty and big and alcoholic, that's going to throw them for a loop. The same reaction as you had with that wine shot, basically, essentially. So I think this is the best example of balance, how to make sure we have balanced wines.
And you just need to have the knowledge of that to prepare whoever you're serving it.
Yeah, or just making sure the wines that you're picking, whether it's a somm or whether you're hosting people as guests, making sure that the wines are in balance and there's not going to be like okay, let's go, because no one wants to do that during dinner. They want it to be seamless, right?
Yeah.
Seamless conversation, seamless wine, seamless food,
Depends on the party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a fair point.
What kind of party do you like to enjoy, Luke?
He's going to
Depends
walk out with number 2. So let's move on to, courtesy of Cully, we have 2 different types of milk for body. So let's go number 1, which is in the front here.
Okay.
And this was, I think it was Rafa Santos who actually suggested this. So another fun one for you guys to try at home. And then try number 2. Now, I want you to go back and forth and really think about body in terms of how it's covering, how it's coating your palate, the weight of it.
I thought that this would be one of the easier examples, but this is kind of difficult.
Oh, yeah? Why?
It's hard for me to identify the body, the weight of it.
It's something, maybe it's a little bit more subtle, but we can, when you're actually thinking about the heftiness on the palate.
I'm going to say number 2 has more body to it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree, Luke?
Yeah, number 2 definitely tastes more like a whole milk.
Yeah.
And number 1 definitely tastes like a skim or like a 2%.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
wine number 2, you guys are correct. That's going to be the whole milk.
It just coats your tongue.
Coats
a
your
It's
little bit
definitely
more
about
thicker.
the coating. It's
Yeah.
the thickness. It's the weight,
The weight.
I would say.
Yeah, weight.
And then wine, I keep saying wine. Milk number 1 was the fat-free. So feel free to try this at home, and you can get a variety of. You can have a milk tasting. You can
Or
do
even like
skim,
half and half.
Yeah, half and half, and cream on one end, and then you could have like skim and soy,
Yeah.
and everything in between, and that will really give you the difference in body.
I think that this was a really good lesson. As I thought when I bought these 2 milks that it'd be more of a drastic comparison
Change.
of weight, but it's actually like you really have to dial in. I mean, you can't just like you can obviously taste the alcohol and
Oh, that's because I was pouring them out, bro.
but this you really is more of a realistic
Yeah,
understanding to me.
exactly. This one is going to be definitely more applicable in training, I would say, like you said, where it's like we need to be super in tune with what is my body actually feeling here? What are the different weights?
This is good.
Yeah, so for me, tasting number one, it's milk. So it's going to have a little bit more weight than something like water,
Sure.
right? But when you compare it to number two, I like to use the word broad. There's like this broad weightiness on the palate for me, you know, and I actually feel it not just like as a washer backer, but it actually sits there a little bit. And that's really important in thinking about food and wine pairings as well, because the body of the wine is going to have a different feel, like actual physical feel in your mouth,
Yeah,
you know, compared to, I know we always do like gulpable washer back wines with food and things like that. And that's different than a wine that has a heavier body that's going to sit there. Both are good, but you need to think about how
When
does
and
that,
where.
when and
Yeah.
where, what type of food, how do I actually want the pairing to work? You know what I
Nice.
mean?
Nice.
Yeah, that's a fun one too,
That
though, right?
is.
So thank you for Rafa for suggesting the milk options.
These are all really good.
These are good.
Yeah.
And moving on, so next we're testing sweetness. This is the last thing. So we just did a really simple syrup. That's going to be sugar and water, and we're doing it in varying quantities mixed with regular water. So you can
Similar to the lemon.
similar to the lemon example, exactly. So let's go ahead and give one the taste.
Okay.
And then two the taste.
Wow.
Oh. Sweet.
Two is definitely has more
Two
sweetness
is more
to it.
sweet. Yeah.
And where and how are you feeling that?
Yeah, definitely different mouthfeel and like, does it have body weight to it?
Well, not, yeah.
Well, but it's going to because there's more sugar in the water.
Yeah. Oh,
There's
yeah.
more in it, right?
I think it's kind of cool to see those two side by side too, because when you think about body, you can think about something like water, which has, you know, it's very fluid, hence water. But then when you have something like honey, which is very, very viscous and has a lot of body, like the prime example of like the heavy milks. And then when you compare that also with sweetness, you feel like almost
I'm
that.
kind of feeling it on the back corners of my tongue.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it's like it kind of covers like the roof of my mouth a little bit too, and like the sides, like right. It's almost a similar salivation type thing, but
Right.
a bass note version.
Yeah.
You know,
Bass note version. I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the acidic test where I felt it in, I guess, my jowls.
the
you
jowl.
know? But like different. Like you said,
Yeah,
bass.
bass
Yeah.
note. Yeah,
Acidic is like treble.
yeah.
Sweet is bass.
It's like that high tone, like
Yeah.
it's zingy, but then this is like that lower bass note version. And I think it was definitely super, super important that we did sweetness last, because
why?
this is going to be, you know, yes, the bitter coffee and the zingy lemon had very lasting impressions, but for the most part, like the lemon can wash away things like
Yeah.
that.
This is
Sweetness
still
is one of
coating.
those things
Yeah.
that it's gonna stay on your palate for a little bit longer too. So when you're thinking about lining up different wines, if you don't want it to get affected, unless you're like very, very experienced, I would usually tend to stay with the sweeter wines, you know, in a appropriate, like if you're doing a blind tasting, I would like to taste that one last, ideally for me. Also just thinking about how sweetness affects food. We talk about that a lot, right? And how it can be a huge component in counterbalancing spicy foods, counterbalancing salty foods, things like that. So for you to gauge sweetness and practice this at home is a super, super useful
Or
talent.
even complementing like
Yeah,
more local
exactly.
cuisine that has a sweeter soy sauce to
Exactly.
it.
Right.
Even something like the kalbi sauce that we
Yeah.
were talking about too, where it has like that natural sweetness to
Yeah.
it in the food and the dish itself, and then having a wine that has natural sweetness in it.
Got it.
And what level of sweetness. right?
Exactly.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's so cool.
So what do you guys think of the whole experiment?
I am super stoked on this.
I liked it. I like that we tested our palate with. I mean, we had some wine, but I like that it was not with wine majority of the time.
Yeah, it's something that everybody
Yeah.
can find at home.
Yeah.
All of these ingredients, like coffee, lemons,
Yeah.
and
Milks.
yeah,
Yeah.
milks. It's something that it doesn't have to be scary, and I think doing it with household ingredients, it kind of makes wine less intimidating because now we're talking and using terms like acidity, tannin and bitterness, things like that.
Well, and for people like Luke and I, being on set and being around people like you or Dad or other guests that we have on, it breaks it down for us a little bit more simply.
More simply,
Yeah.
more relatable.
Yeah.
Because we've all had milk. We've all had
Yeah,
coffee.
yeah. And we all know
Yeah.
that skim milk is a little bit thinner than like a really fatty milk. So like it helps put it in perspective a little bit more too. When I'm talking about body now in a
Yeah.
wine, you're like, oh, okay, it's a thinner body or it's a fatter body, right?
It definitely connects that language.
dots, yeah.
It's like, oh, that's what you mean by
Yes,
body.
yeah.
It's whole milk.
Yeah.
That's what you
Yep,
mean.
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, I'm super, super stoked
Yeah.
that you guys got to try this experiment. I would urge everyone, if you haven't already, to do this or something very similar at home. We're in a pandemic, so you got time. I know you all do.
Just to understand.
Yeah.
More, and to give you a better idea of when you taste wines, like you said, what do you enjoy? What weight do you enjoy? What sweetness do you enjoy? What acidity level do you enjoy?
And then after, they can also they can do this part, and then they can have something simple with food, and they can see how those different things interact, and then they
Right.
can experiment later with different wines, like a high acid wine, a big bodied wine, a
Awesome.
sweet wine with something simple like a fish, and seeing how those interact. That'd be a really cool
Maybe we
experiment
can do that
too.
next time. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is awesome. I highly recommend to do this.
Yeah.
For sure. It gives you a good base on where to gauge your preferences from.
Perfect. And I think at the end of the day, we're all in pursuit of balance. Wine. We want to make sure our lives are in balance. Just
Yeah.
balance is key, right? So using this, it will help you actually go to the store, go to the restaurant, and pick wines of balance that will work all around even better. Yeah.
I like it.
So thank you everyone for tuning in. We hope you found this very, very valuable for your own life and wine tasting experiences at home. Mahalo.